the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest, a channel and intuitive guide blending 15 years of metaphysical study, including the Akashic Records, soul reading, and astrology numerology, none other than Miss Stephanie Potter. Welcome, Stephanie on Abstracasa. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Daniel. Hi, my name is Stephanie. I am an everyday person, but my life is kind of split up into two things. By day, I have a regular 9 to 5 and I work in investments. But by night, I work with people and I work specifically as a spiritual channel and work with the Akashic Records, which may be new to some people, but I help them speak to their soul, their higher self, as well as some of the maybe people in spirit or their spirit team, depending on their beliefs. So I think today we're going to talk a little bit about the Akashic Records and why they might be new for people, even though they've been very, very old and ancient.
Yes, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Miss Stephanie, thank you. For someone who's only heard the term, how would you describe Akashic Records in the most relatable, down to earth way possible?
For sure, that's a great question to start with. So, there's two ways we can look at the Akashic records. There's a whole bunch of science in quantum physics that explain it, and so I'm not going to be your best bet there. But if you are interested in the science, you can look at the work of Irvin Laszlo. I'm going to explain it from a spiritual perspective. And so, when we look at the Akashic records, we think about energy. So, we know that energy can't be destroyed. So everything that has ever existed, that does exist, and that will exist that has energy, this is a what we'll call an energetic library of all those things. So it's kind of a mind blower, right? Like it kind of is like, wow, okay. So the best way to think about it is like a library that has all of the records of energy that's ever existed. So for humans, we think about this, whether you believe we incarnate once or multiple times. This is a library of our incarnations or our incarnation. And this is something that people can access. And each person has an Akashic record. And so it's kind of like if you believe your soul came down here with a purpose, it can give you information as to what you're here to learn, to do, to experience.
Interesting, Miss Stephanie. So, what is the most common misconception people have about Akashic records, and how does that hinder the ability to connect with them authentically?
For sure. So I think the biggest misconception is that it is like a library. So for us, if we go to the library and there's a specific book that we want, we can take it out immediately. With the Akashic records, a lot of times it's going to be what's the information you get is what's going to be best for you in your current moment. So for me, as somebody that can access it for myself and for others, which is one of the gifts that I have, spiritual abilities that I've developed, what I would say is that I can't just pick any information and kind of we'll say like check it out, so to speak. I have to be the channel for the information that wants to come through. So I think that's a pretty big misconception. But the other one I would say is that every single person that's born has the ability to access their own Akashic record. They can do it with practice. And so that would then tell me that every single person has what I would call spiritual abilities.
Spiritual abilities. And how do you differentiate between assessing the true Akashic records versus one's own imaginations, some subconscious mind, or wishful thinking, Miss Stephanie?
Yeah, it definitely takes some practice. Their belief has to be there for sure. But for me, I've trained and I've spent a lot of time in meditation, learning different methodologies as well as, metaphysical information. And so for me, the way that I go to the Akashic Records is through a prayer. I'm able to separate kind of what is my ego mind and then what is what we'll call spirit or a higher power coming through to me. It sounds a little wacky, right? So let me be clear, like I'm a pretty big skeptic. And so I totally understand that for people that are very black and white, this sounds very magical. But what I would say is that I think there's a lot of things that we science can't explain yet, and maybe this is one of them.
The process and experience, Ms. Stephanie, can you walk us through the fundamental or foundational mindset or energetic shift one must make to begin accessing the records even before any specific technique?
Great question. So, what I would say is that we all want to make sure that we're increasing what we'll call our vibration or our frequency. So, what that means is that we want to be in a really good headspace before. So, it means that we're being very happy. Sometimes I dance before I go on a reading. Maybe it's listening to your favorite music, maybe it's exercising. So, if you're sick or you're dealing with something that is challenging mentally, sometimes those aren't the best times to go into the records. The other thing I would talk about is just energetic protection. So for myself, I connect with the earth and the energy of the earth, and then I connect with the energy of the cosmos, which really locks me firmly in between the earth and the cosmos and allows me in a good space to really open up to receive that information. So I believe for each person, it's going to be a little bit different. But I think that the principle of having a high vibration and then just kind of giving yourself a little bit of energetic protection slash a good headspace will be the same for everyone.
Miss Stephanie, what does it actually feel like in your body and awareness when you successfully open the records, and how do you recognize the connection?
So for me, I actually feel on my chest a little bit of what feels like both in my heart, a push and a pull at the same time, which sounds a little bit crazy, but it almost feels like a magnet, right? A magnet's coming in and kind of pushing a little bit on my heart, but also pulling it out, right? So I look at that as like a direct energetic connection. When I first started accessing the records, when I was, in classes and working with partners, I would also sometimes feel pressure in my third eye. For me, that's how I feel it. For other people, they might just feel a warmth. It really depends on your individual body and how you access information. For me, when I'm in the records, where I'm opening up somebody else's records, they could feel many different things. For me, the other thing that I might feel is if I'm doing some mediumship, meaning there's someone that once lived on the earth, has passed over, and is now trying to connect. Sometimes I can feel in my body if they are around, how much they love the person that passed, things like that. But for just working with the Akashic records, like I said, it's a very, very minute kind of push and pull here. And then sometimes they can feel, like I said, when I first started in my head, but that's pretty much gone away.
For the first timer, what a simple, safe, and gentle method to make an initial connection without feeling overwhelmed.
So for me, I would say there's many ways that you can access the Akashic records. For some people, it's just having a clear intention to want to learn more about their lives. So some people can do it through what we call a guided meditation. So if you were to go on YouTube or apps like Insight Timer, you could like put in literally search for like guided meditation to Akashic records. So this is a great way for people that are visual. So in your head, you can almost see yourself maybe ascending up into the clouds or following whatever journey. I think that's really powerful. For people that have more of a like they feel things in their body, I work with a prayer. And I think there are many books out there that have what we would call a pathway prayer, which again, something easily you could search or use ChatGPT for. And that pathway prayer kind of gives like a beautiful intention for you to want to get into the records. I will tell you, the first time that I did it, I kind of went and read what we would consider like the OG of the Akashic records here in the US. Her name is Linda Howell, and she's got a book about how to read the Akashic records. I read the whole book and I did everything that she had said and kind of opened the records one night, and I didn't feel anything. And I was a little bit discouraged and didn't open the records for a while again until they kind of spoke back to me and I decided to take a class. And one of the things that I learned is that I'm not one of those people that can see things. So we call that clairvoyance. So I don't see pictures in my head right away. I'm actually somebody that listens. I can hear things audiently, and then I get downloads, which we call claircognizance. And so, because I didn't kind of see things like so many people had reported or had talked about, I thought, well, maybe this just isn't a spiritual sense that I have. You know, we often hear it called spiritual gifts, but that sounds like only certain people get gifts. And so, what I would say is that everybody has spiritual gifts or spiritual senses. We just don't know what yours are and how they work. And so for me, it took me going back and actually being in a class where I was committed to doing the work and having practice partners where once I figured out what my spiritual gifts were, I realized I was probably actually in the Akashic records, but I had given up because I didn't physically see anything or, you know, psychically see anything.
What are the most common blocks or fears people encounter when trying to access the records, and why can they compassionately move through them?
Some of the most common fears, I think, and blocks would be if you are worried about what you would perceive as challenging or negative energies coming towards you. If you kind of go in with that sort of fear, it's not something that's not going to open the door for you. I would also say that really going in with a clear heart, with the intention to accept whatever it is that comes through for you. So for me, the prayer that I use was handed down through kind of my mentor in the classes, but it talks about honesty, integrity, being of the light, things that I really put that intention. So going in with the best intentions of a clear heart, so I'm not going in to get information that I'm going to use in a bad way. I'm not going in with specific information to make, for some reason, I'm not looking for lottery numbers or things like that, right? So having
Hmm.
kind of the best intentions. And then I think it's that belief. Like if you go in and you're afraid you're not going to get anything, that will get in your way. You really have to be open to understanding, like, how does this come through? So for me, the first few times, it might have just been a color or a word or feeling the difference between physically that feeling in my chest or coming through my third eye, that pressure in my third eye, and not feeling it. And so you have to be ready to spend some time learning how to do it in a day that where we can have, I can have food here very quickly delivered and I can have answers immediately and I can get next day delivery. This is something that you really have to work at and kind of be dedicated to. Don't get me wrong, there are people that might open the records and immediately have experiences, and God, I hope that for everyone. But I would say the majority of us, it's something that you kind of have to work at. And so a lot of times we hear wonderful stories of people that just opened up overnight with whatever spiritual gifts they may have. And that's awesome. But sometimes I think those deter the people that, the rest of us that think, oh, well, I just maybe not blessed. It just may not be meant for me. And the truth is, it's all meant for all of us. I think it's the way of the future, but we have to make sure that we put the practice in and then also believe that we can do it.
What are the most common blocks or something that people hinder them to believe this kind of phenomenal experience?
Yeah, I think that people that are really black and white that look for immediate answers. I think there are people that, there are a lot of charlatans out there as well. And even using the word charlatan feels very old school. But I think there are a lot of people out there that may have spiritual gifts and don't always use them in the best ways and or maybe promote like they have way stronger gifts than they actually do. So like anything that we look at, any kind of we'll look at it as a I say gift, but really it's a I don't know, how would I explain it? Basically, it's a sense, it's something that you've learned how to do. So it's just like if we looked at basketball, right? Some people are
Mhm.
super talented at basketball and some people aren't. Does that mean that every single basketball player is good? Probably not. I'm not here to bash basketball players. I'm just using that as an example. And so what I would say is, I think knowing that there are people out there that, don't have integrity, that can be really rough, especially if you've had a bad experience with someone that, purported to have your best interest at heart and maybe didn't. So I think that's a block. And then I think also, this is sounds like, let's be clear, as the skeptic here, I always tell people I'm from New Jersey. It's kind of in my blood. This sounds a little bit like a little bit crazy, right? And so I think too, it's like believing, and we're in the holiday season, but maybe it's believing that magic can happen. And I don't believe it to be magic. I believe it to be science we just can't explain yet. But if you need to believe in magic, maybe that's part of it too.
How important is a ritual such as a prayer, setting an intention, or creating sacred space versus a simply developing a pure and focused intention, Miss Stephanie?
I believe for each person, it's what you need at the time. So for me, when I first started, I had to do lots of kind of meditation to get in what I call energetic hygiene. I talked a little bit about kind of protecting myself and making sure I was in a high vibration. I still use the prayer. But I know there are people that, like, as I moved along in my practice, I was able to kind of cut down the amount of meditation I did, and so, depending on where you're at with your practice, that can change, right? You might be able to click in quicker. But for a lot of people, I think it's about just learning to build your intention and what works for you. So, for you, if it is using a guided meditation to get in and to either meditate or to get into the Akashic records and see kind of what unfolds for you, that's the best thing. So, what I always say to people is it depends on yourself and your own practice. I know that's not the best answer because it's not a hard and fast rule. But I think this allows us for creativity and for you to lean into, whether you feel like maybe you hear messages, maybe you feel like you see things, maybe you feel things in your body. We look at all of these psychic senses. And what I would say is many people are already experiencing them today. They just don't believe in them. And so this here is, again, very much about each person and their own individual practice. Some people find things like using oracle or tarot cards, right? So having something that they can touch or that they can get direct messages from and then use their intuition. Some people like to connect through, like I said, a prayer or a meditation. It really depends. And so I think based on your question, it really depends on the person and what their intention is. But across the board, we want to make sure that there is clear intentions, an open heart, and everything is of the highest and best, right? We're going in I go in as a channel. I know that this information is not me, I'm not creating it. I am just the channel bringing it through. So whether it's through for myself or for other people, I want to make sure that I'm the channel and that my ego, the part of me that really wants to take over, is kind of pushed to the side. And that takes practice.
A practice indeed. So, how can we use records to understand our soul's purpose or our current life themes in a practical way that informs our daily choices?
The records are a great place to do that. So, like I said, they will kind of give you what you need at the time. The way that I do it is I actually will open up my own records and I will ask a question. And so the best kind of questions are not yes and no questions or looking for specific answers. They're questions that begin with how, what, or why. And so what I will usually do is write the question down. I have a notebook that I use for what I call channeling. And I will open my record, I will ask the question, and then I will just sit back, allow myself to connect, and then start to write. And so to me, people have seen that before. So the idea is you're allowing yourself to write whatever is coming through at the time. And so at some point, you'll realize that you're writing things down. At first, it feels like it's coming from you, but then it starts to come from another source. And so for me, that's a really beautiful way to do it. So sometimes I'll say something like, what do I need to know most right now? Or can you tell me why this particular challenge, how I can think about it a different way? And so learning from what I believe my higher self or my guides, depending on who I've requested to kind of speak with, they always give me a good perspective. They're not always going to give you direct answers, but they're going to give you the information you need to either do the work to get the answers or information that will help you understand how things are working and maybe sometimes why. I think that they're a great place for people that are at different points in their life where they either feel maybe not their happiness or their happiest, or what I call transitional points, right? So something has either happened for you that you didn't choose, a new job, a new place to live, a new relationship, a loss of a relationship, whatever that looks like. And sometimes things you did choose or didn't choose, and figuring out kind of how do you get through those times. And so, one of the things that we see with religion today, I like to say I believe in all religions and no religion, is that sometimes people have trouble connecting with a higher power because they're looking for it outside of themselves. Going within the Akashic records, specifically your own, will help you connect with yourself, your heart, and your soul, and guide you to where the answers that you seek.
Miss Stephanie, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my Abstract Essay is already in fifth season, Abstract Poetry in second season, and my book 101 review coming sixth season, comedy 101 in third season, and my food 101 in sixth season this December, geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 our fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in second season, and my baby podcast, mental health 101, law 101, bible verses 101, motivation 101, entrepreneurship 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Stephanie, for those who have been practicing a while, how does the nature of the information or the connection itself evolve and deepen over time?
Yeah, I would say that for me, the connection has deepened and connects in that, like I spoke to earlier, I'm able to connect a different way. I would also say the way that I do information and my readings now work a little bit differently. So now, before I meet with somebody, I get their permission. I go into their record before I meet with them, and I download a message and I write that down. And then when I meet with them, whether it's in person or virtually, we open their Akashic record so they can feel the energy of that. We go through that original download that I have, and then we also go through their questions. And that's when I'm able to bring in their spirit guides, spirit team, angels, whatever kind of their beliefs are. And then we walk through them. And what's really interesting is that in that first part, you kind of hear from the soul or the higher self. And in that second part, you get the practicality of your spirit guides, your spirit team, angels, again, whatever you believe in that are around you every day. And what's really nice is that before I meet with people and even go into their record to do the download, I ask them to physically, with a pencil, write down 3 different questions that they may have. And when they write those questions down, they never give them to me. But when I go in and do the download on the first part and I get kind of that original download from their higher self, those questions many times get answered. I'd like to say it's a mini miracle that I get to see on the regular. So what I would tell people is be open to, the first time that you do something and you develop your practice to it specifically shifting. Because when I first did this, I would never kind of do an opening download and I wouldn't be writing things down. I would just be opening up the records and trying to pull down whatever information that was coming through. But energetically, it was very hard for me because I would burn out all my energy. So, what I would say is be open to your practice changing and then also listening to many people. Everybody that works with the Akashic Records does it a little bit differently, and so will you. And I think that is super fun to figure out what does that look like now and then in your future.
Yes, and again, Miss Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
For sure. So, what I'd really like to do is just open people up to learn more about the records as well as to find meditation that might work the best for them. So, if you go to my website, which you see here, Sayani Akasha, but to make it easier, you can also go to stephanienicolepotter.com. I'll repeat that, stephanienicolepotter.com. And I have absolutely free. I have a PDF with many different things about the Akashic Records. So you can find other podcasts, you can find books, magazines, articles, whatever speaks to you, videos. I've also got a free meditation quiz that you answer just a few questions, and it will match the type of 2 types of meditation that might be best for you, as well as 3 sample meditations from the free Insight Timer. They are not done by me by any means, but these are professional people that have great meditations that might work for you. So, nothing to sell here, all for free, but just want to help people in their spiritual walk.
Yes, people support Miss Stephanie because if you support her for sure, more and more empowering advocacy will rise. And one more question, Miss Stephanie. If the ultimate goal is to live with more clarity and purpose, how does eventually reach a point where the wisdom of the records becomes a natural, integrated part of their being, less about assessing and more about being?
I love that question. What I would say is that I think our goal here every day is to get a little bit closer to our soul. Obviously, we're here as humans and we're here to have the full human experience, right? Everything from unbelievable pain, shame, grief, things like that, to joy and wonder and curiosity and love at its highest peak. And I think what we would do is by working with the Akashic Records, get closer and closer to who we came here to be and what that happiness looks like, as well as understanding those levels of pain, shame, and other emotions. So we're here to validate the whole human experience and its beauty for better or worse. So what I think is that by connecting with your records, it's just going to get you a little bit more aligned with what's going to make you happier in your life and the time that you get to spend here on this beautiful planet.
Thank you for that empowering answer, Miss Stephanie. And more to come, people. See you soon.